Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It is August 18, 2016, and we have very serious saber rattling in Ukraine. I don't want this video to be alarmist at all, even though it sounds like it, but honestly, this is a warning to the American people and the people of the world. I think we are on the verge of a further escalation in Ukraine. But this is what people don't understand. They don't get the truth. This is not an invasion by Putin on the border, who's currently amassing up to 40,000 plus troops, heavy armaments, artillery. This is not an invasion. This is a response and retaliation to U.S. intervention. See, people don't understand in Ukraine, just like we've seen in countless other countries in the Middle East. It's the United States of America, through their covert operations, U.S. intelligence, and her allies that are actively destabilizing and overthrowing these governments. We see it time and time again. We've seen it in Iraq, we've seen it in Afghanistan, we've seen it in Libya, we've seen it, the attempt at least, in Syria. Now, it's been successful in Ukraine. The United States of America actively overthrew the government, the rightful government of Viktor Yanukovych. We're even seeing this come out in reports today. It's amazing. It's insane. They're pulling a rabbit out of the hat again. CNN is. MSNBC is. Fox News is. Accusing Paul Manafort, one of Donald Trump's operatives, of somehow siphoning money back from the leader at the time, Viktor Yanukovych, back to the United States, is somehow they're trying to manufacture it as an illegal act or something like that, even though they overlook Hillary Clinton's criminal activity again and again, over and over. And now we're potentially looking at, and I hope not, I fear it, a retaliation in Ukraine because Putin is pissed off. Now, the mainstream media is going to tell you things like he actively annexed Crimea, like it was some kind of illegal act or something like that. It wasn't. Again, the United States admits to this terrorism. They admit to overthrowing these nations, arming the radicals on the ground with weapons and guns. We've seen it in the Middle East. We're seeing it in Ukraine. Now, keep in mind, the former government of Ukraine, the rightful government, was a very strategic ally to Vladimir Putin. No wonder he is in the process of retaliating. The question is it now? This has been reported by the Associated Press. This has been reported by the Financial Times and others. Among the units deployed in the area are armored vehicles, tanks, and fighter jets. 40,000 plus troops and armored vehicles along the border right now. This is very serious. Again, I talked about it in today's show. The next president of the United States inherits this war. Whether or not it's Hillary Rodham Clinton, Rodham, people don't like it when I say Rodham, or it's Donald J. Trump. This plays into economics, folks. Again, notice how the U.S. financial market, global markets at large, are being rigged to levitate higher for a reason, because it favors Hillary Clinton in her chances of winning this rigged election. If the bottom fell out now, it would work against her. It would work for Donald Trump. You know, I really believe that the shoe drops when the next president of the United States gets into office, whether or not it's Hillary Clinton or it's Donald Trump. And it is scary. You know, they put it out there. They want us to believe, for example, that the monetization of our debt into infinity, quantitative easing, the trillions of dollars spent, that there's going to be no consequences, that there's going to be no inflation, that there's not going to be another crash. Well, I don't like to guarantee anything, but I will almost guarantee, without the shadow of a doubt, that there will be consequences. And there will be severe repercussions. Troops amassing at the border right now, 40,000 plus. And I actually think strategically for Putin, even though the mainstream media, tends to blow things out of proportion, of course, they want to put out these propaganda pieces. I actually personally think, in my humble opinion, this is a strategic moment for Putin to strike. Why do I think that? Because the nation's currently in chaos. We're engaged in these divisive politics. We don't know who the next president of the United States is going to be. So he acts now. It forces the hand of these politicians. I actually think it potentially works in Donald Trump's favor, because I think most Americans actually view Donald Trump as a stronger leader. They view him more Putin-like. Now, I'm not saying Vladimir Putin is some good guy or something. I'm not cheerleading him or anything like that. But he's respected. He's powerful. He's tactical. He makes Barack Obama look like a chump playing his global chess game. He makes our nation look weak. So why not strike when we are at our weakest? As Barack Obama's hair is turning gray, as Hillary Clinton is literally falling down, being propped up like some kind of mannequin or something, Weekend at Bernie's, having seizures with her face going all over the place. And then the mainstream media calling that a conspiracy when we know that it's not a conspiracy. You see, alternative media is forcing the hand, forcing them to talk about these issues. What I'm concerned about is a global conflict in the hands of Hillary and people that support her, fund her super PACs like George Soros, these very, very evil, sinister men. Didn't enjoy disruption. They enjoy the death. They enjoy the violence. They enjoy the 500,000 plus people killed, the innocent civilians in places like Syria. They enjoy the destabilization effort in Ukraine. And the consequences, again, mass death. You remember MH17? Remember that? The Malaysian Airlines flight? There's been a lot of them. You probably lost count. Remember how they said Vladimir Putin shot it down? Bullshit alert. Bullshit. More propaganda. Again, they want to position Putin in a bad light. I'm not a cheerleader of Vladimir Putin, okay? Nor am I a cheerleader of RT or Russia or anything like that. But I know when I smell a rat. And I know when I'm looking at a turd. And I know, because I do this 24/7, hours a day, 7 days a week. I know propaganda when I see it. If it looks like a duck and it's quacking like a freaking duck, it's a duck. And again, I don't mean to sound alarmist, but 40,000 troops at the border, and now that I see, and I can see this, maybe not everybody can, I see this as a strategic moment to strike. America is weak. This ties into the economic, political warfare that we're experiencing today. You know, we've seen this with the establishment of the AIIB, for example, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the counterpoint to the long-dominated Western-backed World Bank and International Monetary Fund. We see this with massive withdrawals of U.S. treasuries from countries like China and Russia, the accumulation of massive amounts and tons of gold. You know, they tell you, you shouldn't own gold or any of these things, precious metals, hard assets. Well, then why are nations around the world accumulating it in droves? Because they know that the long Western-dominated society that has made up the good old USA today is faltering. It's failing. It's why they are pressing the withdrawal button. This cash is going elsewhere. It's why there's a war on cash, 0% interest rates, quantitative easing into infinity, $700 billion worth of bailouts during the TARP fund, 29 plus trillion according to some estimates with the too big to fail bailouts, and continuing today. Where do we go from here? Like, do you think this is going to be easy? I mean, even in a best case scenario with Donald Trump as president of the United States, he's going to inherit the worst financial crash in the history of the world. He's going to inherit the next great war. A time when everybody on the left is talking about transgenders and the fact that everybody's got to cut their dick off like the former Olympian Bruce, Caitlyn. Well, the mainstream media is focused on stories about Ryan Lochte and what's going on in Rio at this moment. Like, anyone gives a shit. 40,000 troops are amassing themselves on the border. Sounds like a much bigger headline to me. It's why we're covering it. It's why nobody else will. Yes, there's a propaganda slant coming from the mainstream media, coming from the Financial Times, coming, from Associated Press, etc. People need to understand and know the truth. Just like Barack Obama is responsible for ISIS, just like Hillary Clinton, they both created it out of thin air. Barack Obama is the president of ISIS. Hillary Clinton is the co-chief, co-president of ISIS. ISIS didn't even exist up until about a year or so ago. We never had this terrorism in the United States before. We never had these false flag events. We never had it before. Until now, they need to put the terror alert up. You see, my fear is they use fear. It's a good word because they're using this fear and the terror alert, hitting these white-hot all-time highs, as a way to condition the masses and to control you. Just like what they do through the National Spying Agency that makes up the NSA. Notice all of these leaks came out through Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and others. You're being spied on, anti-constitutionally, illegal search and seizure. Have they done anything about it? That's just a question. No. They haven't done shit. They just wanted you to know about it. Again, impregnate the fear of control in your mind. This is real. This is very, very serious. And there are consequences, this is what people need to understand, to the actions that America has directly taken in this part of the world. And so tell your friends and family, Tell them, make it clear that when Putin responds, this is retaliation for American warfare in this part of the world. This would be the equivalent, think about this for a minute, of Vladimir Putin arming insurgents in Canada, a U.S. ally, with guns, funding, overthrowing the rightful president of Canada and the government, and then suggesting through RT, his media giant, his propaganda arm, although I think they put out some really truthful articles, it's still a propaganda machine of Russia, and blaming it on the United States, and blaming the United States for retaliating and defending its ally. You see, that's only what Putin is doing. He's defending a strategic ally, just like the USA would defend their strategic ally, whether or not it was Canada or one of our other allies. You know, I mentioned this before. It'd be like, you know, Putin arming Occupy Wall Street with guns and overthrowing the quote-unquote rightful government, even though it's been hijacked, even though we have a Manchurian candidate, even though we're in the situation today. And they always like to say that they steer away from war. Well, then why is it we have more wars today? Why is the world and the USA hanging from a thread, just about to snap? Russia and China, and I hate to say this, but it's the truth, they're more powerful than the United States today. We are seeing this transition of wealth. The wealth transfer has already occurred. It's moving into the hands of what a lot of Americans have considered enemies, all as a byproduct and result of the geopolitical strategy that has made up the weak Barack Obama administration. It's why, even though he says he won't, he's negotiating with terrorists, paying $400 million ransoms to the country of Iran to release several individuals. Yeah, that sounds like a good deal. A few $100 million for the release of a couple people. But I thought you don't negotiate, Mr. President. You obviously do. This is a strategic time to strike. I put out dozens of videos, for example, years ago, when I suspected and could see instinctually through the propaganda machine that makes up this mainstream media web and narrative that we were going to war with Syria, for example, and that there would be likely airstrikes in the near future. And people laughed. They called it a conspiracy theory. And what happened? Even though Obama denied it at first, he went on camera pretty quick after that, months and months after, said, hey, yep, we're launching airstrikes. Or all of a sudden ISIS had formed out of nowhere. You know, all those videos, propaganda videos, are being put out. The same thing is happening now. Ukraine, and I've done dozens and dozens of videos on this, and a lot of content, is a flashpoint. This doesn't end well. At a time when the United States of America is its weakest, and it's exactly why we need strong leadership in the name of people like Donald J. Trump and the alternative media that is propelling him and the people's voice in a position of power to defend this great, great nation. I'm Christopher Green. Get this video out everywhere. Make it viral. Hard-hitting it in your face. And click the link below to visit our website and support us. Peace. That are actively destabilizing and overthrowing these governments. We see it time and time again. We've seen it in Iraq, we've seen it in Afghanistan, we've seen it in Libya, we've seen it, the attempt at least, in Syria. Now, it's been successful in Ukraine. The United States of America actively overthrew the government, the rightful government of Viktor Yanukovych. We're even seeing this come out in reports today. It's amazing. It's insane. They're pulling a rabbit out of the hat again. CNN is. MSNBC is. Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It is August 18, 2016, and we have very serious saber rattling in Ukraine. I don't want this video to be alarmist at all, even though it sounds like it, but honestly, this is a warning to the American people and the people of the world. I think we are on the verge of a further escalation in Ukraine. But this is what Fox News is accusing Paul Manafort, one of Donald Trump's operatives, of somehow siphoning money back from the leader at the time, Viktor Yanukovych, back to the United States, is somehow they're trying to manufacture it as an illegal act or something like that, even though they overlook Hillary Clinton's criminal activity again and again, over and over. And now we're potentially looking at, and I hope not, I fear it, a retaliation in Ukraine because Putin is pissed off. Now, the mainstream media is going to tell you things like he actively annexed Crimea, like it was some kind of illegal act or something like that. It wasn't. Again, the United States admits to this terrorism. They admit to overthrowing these nations, arming the radicals on the ground with weapons and guns. We've seen it in the Middle East. We're seeing it in Ukraine. Now, keep in mind, the former government of Ukraine, the rightful government, was a very strategic ally. People don't understand. They don't get the truth. This is not an invasion by Putin on the border, who's currently amassing up to 40,000 plus troops, heavy armaments, artillery. This is not an invasion. This is a response and retaliation to U.S. intervention. See, people don't understand in Ukraine, just like we've seen in countless other countries in the Middle East. It's the United States of America, through their covert operations, U.S. intelligence, and her allies,